Now, early in the summer, as spring effectively gives way to summer, you can already have a riot of colour in the garden, and managing that change from spring to summer can be quite tricky. And a lot of gardens do end up either being very colourful in the spring or very colourful in the summer and later in the year. So trying to get a garden that combines colour all year round, it can be tricky, because there's so much going on at the end of the spring and the early part of the summer. There's so much that you don't want to spoil. I mean, look around me here. There's fantastic carpets of bluebells that will go on for another few weeks yet, and there's lots of lovely flowering shrubs all over the place, things like rhododendrons and magnolias, all still in flower, all still pumping out the colour. But in the next month or so, as we start to get into summer proper, that colour from those spring plants will start to recede, and we need to turn up the heat under the SummerColour plants. In the spring, it's all about shrubs and colourful bulbs and the odd bit of herbaceous material. But by the time we get to the summer, we're really relying on herbaceous plants, the odd shrub here and there to provide a bit of colour, but predominantly bedding plants, those things that we've come to accept as bedding plants, colourful, tender plants and half-hardy and hardy annuals that will take on that display into the summer. So let's have a walk around the garden and see what colour is there at the moment, and also assess the places where we might want to inject some colour for the summer. Now, there's a really good example of colour use behind me that's left over really from the spring. You can see that there's that beautiful purpley pink honesty with the lovely yellow of the deciduous azaleas behind, and that's a really clever contrast that really punches above its weight. Now, in common with many other spring displays, these will only last a few weeks and then they'll be over. The difference with SummerColour is that you're trying to use plants that will repeat flower, keep pumping those flowers out for as long a season as possible. If you think about summer flowering shrubs, for example, buddleia, that goes on flowering for 3 months even. And things like this lovely Helminocystus and the other cistus relatives, the rock roses, they will produce masses of flower on and on. They've got lots of buds coming on here. All the new shoots hopefully will have terminal flower buds in them that will keep that flower going for many, many months. And then you've got things like perennials. So this geum, for example, is just coming into flower. This is one of the most popular geums that we've seen in the last few years. This is totally tangerine, and this will produce one flush of flowers, and then if you cut it back after that first flush of flowers is over, you'll get another flush. So that's a really good value herbaceous perennial plant that will keep on flowering right the way through the summer. And even things like this lovely astrantia, this will have an early flush of flower in early summer, and then cut that back and you'll get another reflowering later in the season. So the beauty of lots of these summer plants is that they will keep on flowering and flowering if you treat them right. But our biggest thing that we rely on really in the summer for masses of colour has got to be those bedding plants. So tray bedding, things like these lovely marigolds, these French marigolds, these will produce lots of flowers during the course of the season. You should get 3 or 4 months of flowers out of those. And then other traditional things like these pelargoniums, which we traditionally call geraniums, they will flower on and on and on until the first frosts. And then dahlias, if you keep deadheading those, these tender perennial plants that come back year after year, these will flower for a long, long season. And of course, if you then team those up with some really dramatic foliages to give real punches of colour, then you've got lots of material to play with and to provide lots and lots of colour. So we're now going to have another look at the garden and see where there are some spaces that we can use some really useful summer colour for the rest of this year. Now, this patch of garden has been cleared of all its plants with the exception of a few bits and pieces because it's being redeveloped, and that's a great opportunity to fill it with some really good summer colour as a real eye-catching focal point, if you like. In most gardens, you'll find little pockets or holes in amongst more permanent planting that needs to be filled with a quick injection of colour. And many people go to the garden centres and DIY stores and buy a whole mishmash of different colours and quite randomly use them to fill those holes. And those can often lead the garden to look rather incoherent and sort of muddled. Far better to choose just one colour range of plants to use in your garden to fill in those gaps, or to take inspiration from individual plants close by. So for example, if we were just going to plant a small area at the base of this shrub, this euonymus, you'd take your colour guidance from the creamy yellowness of the foliage, and you might put in there some purple flowers at the bottom to be a good contrast with that shrub, or you might choose to take the colour theme on from the yellow side of the spectrum and get some sort of coordination, if you like, between the colours. So try and look at the spaces you're filling and try not to just make a jelly bean mixture that will just be a pretty riot of colour, yes, but won't have that colour theming taken seriously, if you like. But we're going to get on and plant this in the next video, this large area, and we're going to use it as a demonstration to show the different colour contrasts and the different colour harmonies that you can create to enjoy for summer.